Can I tell you a secret? I have won thousands of chess games with this simple opening. It starts with the move d6, then you play knight to f6, you immediately put pressure on the center, and finally, once they defend it, you play the move e5 because you want to fight for the center. Look how I use this magic opening to crush this 2300 rated opponents. It would be really sad if I'm gonna lose after saying that. They go for this exchange variation. A lot of people are afraid of it, but actually this is the best thing that can happen to you. Don't be afraid of having your king in the center. Without the queens on the board, there is no risk of getting checkmated, and that's the only reason you make the castles, to put your king into safety. But here, the king would be so useful in the center. You're gonna play bishop d6 to defend it. By the way, very good points to remember, because otherwise you might get into trouble with knight to g5 and bishop to c4, and then you need this move rook to f8 to just defend the pawn. So remember, if they start with knight f3, we play bishop d6 and not knight to d7. The advantage of this move is also that now we can play king to e7 instead of normal king to e8. I mean, this is so great. If he would have played bishop c4 earlier and we would have played king to e7, then we are gonna block our own bishop. That's bad. But here, we are happy to place the king there in one tempo. If they play knight g5, we are ready with the rook f8. Otherwise, our rook would be happy to join the attack in one tempo. Okay, they do exactly that. They play knight to g5, but we don't care. We simply play rook f8. Next move, we can even just kick the knight away with the move h6. And there is nothing for the knight to do than just go backwards. And you never are afraid of these takes, because two minor pieces are stronger than the rook and the pawn in the middle game. The rook is still not so mobile, there are not so many open files where the rook can penetrate, so the minor pieces would be much stronger. And then our plan is very simple. We want to attack on the queen side. You always want to have this simple one strategic idea. And this is what we achieve. We just want to somehow play c6, b5. c6, by the way, is a very important move. Let's just, I don't know, do we need to make it here? Because we need to be careful with our bishop. Let's say they're gonna castle, and then this bishop might be hanging, which is gonna in turn make knight f7 idea possible. So we can do that if we first play the move h6 before they castle. If I play c6, they're gonna castle, and I'm gonna play h6. Now knight takes f7 is possible. Remember, in the end of the day, this bishop will be hanging. So I'm gonna play h6 first, attack the guy. First of all, you're just wasting so much time, right? Because you played knight f3 to knight f3, losing 2 tempi. Meanwhile, I have played h6 and rook f8. Yeah, maybe the rook is not that great here, but anyway, that's an improvement. I control the g5 square now. I can even play knight to g4. What do you do with that bishop? I mean, you don't want to let me take it, but otherwise you have to go backwards. Maybe I want to wait just one tempo with it. Because if he is gonna castle alone, and then I'm gonna play knight g4, the f2 pawn will be hanging. So you cannot just escape with the bishop. Meanwhile, I'm gonna play this move c6. Please remember it, the most useful move that you should make in this entire opening, because it's gonna control those key squares. And now I'm ready for knight g4. Like, what do you even... I have to check the tactics, because you never ever make a move, doesn't matter how great it seems to be, without thinking about your opponent's possible responses. But knight g4 attacking the bishop, so rook takes d6 might be a tactic. I can even take the bishop on e3 because I'm also attacking this guy and then take it back to avoid all sorts of problems. I literally don't see it. I think he's just kind of blundering this positional idea. So I'm not winning anything, but this is a way to overtake the initiative as black already. Once we get a pair of bishops, we can also play bishop e6 next. Now that we control the g5 square, everything is absolutely perfect. And people are afraid because the king just loses the right to castle. Well, guess what? I don't need castles. The king is beautiful on his own. It controls so many squares, it defends the pawn, it defends the king, and once we reach the endgame, I'm so closer to the center comparing to my opponent, and that would be another huge advantage. And I save time, because I don't need to castle. Now my opponent finally realizes that he has got in trouble. There is no way to avoid losing the bishop, and I'm happy to take it. Actually, I can even leave it there because he cannot escape anyway, but I prefer to do that just so that there are no tactics anymore available for my opponent. Maybe the drawback is that he can play that at some point, but without the dark squares bishop, I'm not afraid of that. I can just step back, there is no bishop c5 check, and there are no penetration squares for the rooks. This is very important. Okay, now I want to play b5. This is typically a plan we go for in the Philidor defense, but as always, I need to check the tactics, and I think I cannot do it immediately because of knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop d5. And then my rook is trapped in the corner. So to avoid this problem, very simple, I first need to play knight d7, which is a part of my plan anyway. This knight is beautiful on c5. By the way, if this rook goes to d3, then I can step back to c7, and next play knight to c5, attacking this rook, winning some time again, and my knight is so beautiful on c5. By the way, I have an entire course based on this specific opening. The link would be in the description. If you join the program now, you get a full month of live coaching with me. Don't miss this opportunity, grab your limited spot. Knight h4. My opponent tries to create a threat, and that is the right thing to do. But again, it's so easy to deal with it. I can just play the move g6, controlling the f5 square, and look at this knight on h4. What is it doing? Absolutely nothing. And I'm ready for my move b5 and going on. I just have this strategic idea in mind, this queen side attack, and I go for it. As simple as that. My opponent realizes now that even though the position feels great, I mean, all of his pieces are developed, he cannot do anything about it. He cannot create any threats. He just struggles to find a move, I would argue here. Yes, you can play rook d3, feels very reasonable. Okay, I go bishop c7. What do you do next? I don't see a single idea, while I have so many useful moves to come. Don't care about this bishop so much in the beginning. The bishop will find its place. Normally, it goes to e6 here, but you should not worry too much in the very beginning, in the opening about it. First, to develop everything else and prepare your attack, and then the bishop will find its spot. Okay, f3. What about this knight on h4? It literally has 0 squares to go. But I don't care. I am ready for the move b5. Just briefly, I need to check bishop takes b5, another tactic. If bishop takes, pawn takes, and then knight d5 check, I should be careful not to lose that bishop. But I can even play king e6. I don't see any problem whatsoever. Knight c7 is not a move. Knight f4 is not a move. This knight does not participate. Yes, I like the move b5. Finally, if he just sacrifices to take all of the pawns here, then I can probably even just play bishop c5 and then rook b8, activate all of my pieces. I don't feel like he has enough activity. He steps back. Now pause the video for a second, try to figure out what is the logical next step for us to continue. I hope you succeeded with that. Of course, it's the move a5. We need to continue expanding, getting more space, and creating yet a new threat. Now, again, he doesn't have time to do whatever he wanted to do, maybe except for rook d3, but again, that does not change anything. And otherwise, I'm threatening to just play a4 and trap that bishop. So he has to play a4 himself, but now I go b4, attacking this knight, pushing it backwards. So he is losing a lot of time yet again. And then I'm ready to play knight to c5, bringing my knight to a beautiful position, ready to grab that bishop as well. And now my bishop is open, so bishop e6 is coming at some point. I just need to decide whether I want to take first or I want to play bishop e6 immediately. Both moves are fine. It's not like there is right and wrong, but I really love bishops. He's gonna take with the pawn and then claim that this rook is actually convenient there, but sooner or later I'm gonna exchange it and yeah, maybe he wants to remaneuver his knight to a better square. If I play bishop e6, then he can take and maybe play b3, and then it's not that simple to continue putting pressure. So I'm gonna take. This is a tempo move. Then I'm gonna play bishop e3. I'm gonna bring my rook to the center, and from the very beginning of the game, I've just easily overtaken this initiative because my opponent sees this opening once in like a few hundred games, whereas I played every single time, and it brought me absolutely amazing results. I have become an international master with this specific opening. I have taught it a lot of my students, and that helped them to gain so many rating points. You can be the next one. Just feel free to try this opening today. He takes with the rook, which is very surprising. He doesn't want to destroy his pawn structure and wants to play b3 with the pawn later on, but it feels very weird, to be honest. I can start with bishop e6, there is nothing wrong with this move, but I'm thinking maybe I can take advantage of this rook being there. Maybe I can start, because if I play bishop e6, he goes rook d3 and bishop c5, he can play b3, and then I cannot create another threat. So maybe instead I can play bishop to c5 first, so that now I'm threatening to win the rook. I want to play bishop e6, the only square is d3, then I want to play bishop c4, the only square is rook d2. Ah wait, there is also rook d7, the check that I need to take into account. Although, even that is good for me, because the knight would be hanging there, and rook d8, maybe I should start with rook d8, just you never want to allow your opponents to penetrate. Or another way to go about it is start with the move bishop a6, just attacking the knight goes away or he defends it, and then I play bishop c4, and the rook literally has 0 squares to go, so bishop a6 is a huge threat. It also stops the move rook d3, so that he does not have this rook d7 check. Whenever you are thinking about your moves, don't forget to think about your opponent's counterplay. It's so essential. Now he struggles to find a move. I mean, what will you do here? It's not even simple to save the rook. Probably the best move is rook d3, just to stop this move bishop a6. And then, yeah, I do need to go for bishop e6, transpose into the same line with b3, but the endgame is so great for me. I have nothing to worry about. I even have a crazy idea to play bishop to h3, so that this knight has literally no moves to go. He cannot even remaneuver itself to g2. Then I'm gonna exchange all of the rooks and just destroy him with my bishops. He plays king to b1, but that does not stop my plan. Now I just go bishop to a6, attacking the knight. Probably he wanted to like remaneuver the knight to here, but what do you do about the rook? The rook is literally trapped. Yes, bishop to c4. Good luck saving that guy. Maybe at least knight d3 is possible to like take on c5, but I can just go back and then take the rook. Okay, he goes here, but I can still grab it. Is bishop d4 a move? Probably it is. I mean, bishop d6 is just as good, but bishop d4 I feel is more active, so let's go for it. As long as he cannot play c3, the bishop is very good there. Okay, now I have an extra exchange. The question is, how do you convert that into a full point? f4, he's trying to put more pressure on my position. I think I really want to take. Because I have an extra exchange, I have a bishop, so I want to open up the position so that my rooks are more active. Why not? Alternatively, I can just play rook to d8. I also love it. That activates a new piece, and if he takes, I can just take it back, using the fact that the knight is pinned. I love it even more so that I don't allow him any counterplay whatsoever. If he plays f5, I'm ready to just answer with g5. He can play knight f3, maybe, yeah, that was the idea. Now I definitely take. I'm always fine with exchanges, of course. Right, and otherwise, again, I want to limit his potential here, so maybe I play the move f6. Although then he can go back to h4, attacking the g6 pawn. Knight e5 is not a big threat. He can play e5, but again, it doesn't feel like a huge problem for me. In fact, I'm so much not afraid of the move e5 that I want to provoke it by playing rook to d6, then a5, rook d5. I just want to double the rooks. Let me see if I blunder any tactics. I don't think so. There are no checks. The king in the center, it's beautiful. It never got into any trouble. Hopefully never will. But it's very good there, controlling so much. Rook e1, I don't think it's dangerous for me. So I can continue my idea, e5, just rook d5. How do I penetrate? How I use the extra material advantage? This is the real question. Because if everything is closed, it's very difficult for me to take advantage. Maybe just h5, so that my pawn structure is very solid on the light squares and my bishop is dark squares, so I control all types of squares. Light squares with my pawns, dark squares with my bishop. Probably I need just to step back with my bishop so that the rooks are opened up. f5, okay. My opponent feels like he is some material down, so he has to go forward, he has to create some threats. The drawback, though, is that he's opening up the position in the process. And that is really not great if you're some material down, if you're fighting against the bishop, against the rooks. Maybe I can just take it. Should be a little bit careful not to allow those knights too much of counterplay, but he's kind of threatening the move e5. At least creating some threats. Maybe I need just to step back with the king. Let me do that. Just king f8. So that once I take, there are no checks. And I want just to take and play bishop f6, so that my bishop controls everything. That is why he plays e5, but now I can just go rook d5. Maybe e6 is his idea. Just bishop f6 back, I don't really care that much. So be careful with your opponent's threats. It's never too late to lose your game, but also don't overestimate it. Don't think that, oh my god, my opponent is gonna just destroy me. No, the position is very solid. What do I do now? Do I play rook e8? He's closing it, which is good for him, as he has knights and he is not giving me open files. Maybe I can just play b3 now. What do you think? I really like this move. Maybe I should have played it before, because this knight on d3 is what makes the position solid for my opponent. So if I can get rid of it, then the entire position can just fall apart. c4, okay, that is a little bit unexpected. Let's just step back. Yeah, I should not allow him to easily play e6 at some point, because the knight is coming, especially if he plays like knight f4 and then e6, that might really be dangerous. So all I want to do is somehow exchange a pair of rooks. In this case, that would even threaten the checkmate. For example, knight f4, I can play bishop to f2, threatening rook d1. And this b3 pawn, it turns out, can be a huge, huge factor in this game. You don't want to let your opponent be in the driver's seat. Even if you are some material up, it doesn't mean that you have to relax. No, stay alert in terms of what your opponent wants to achieve and can achieve, and then try to be the one creating threats. Yeah, he plays knight to c1 just to make sure that he doesn't get checkmated, and he wants probably to play something like knight g5 and a6. So I should be fast with creating my threats. How can I do that? Maybe bishop f2 and bishop g3. And I open up my rooks. I want to go forward. And then in combination with my bishop, that would be enough to actually deliver a checkmate. Maybe he wants to take here. That's another thing I haven't thought about. But as long as I exchange the rooks, I don't think the pawns matter too much anymore. Still, I feel like knight takes b3 is his best chance. And then the question is, do I exchange it like that? Or do I do something else? You always want to create a passer in the endgame. So if I can, for example, exchange the rooks, then bring the rook to h1 and play the move bishop takes h4, creating that passer, that would be super dangerous. Okay, he plays e6. Basically, I have to take it. I don't have any choice. And now he wants to play knight g5. Threatening knight takes e6 check. That is pretty powerful, actually, because he also has this rook along the f file. How do I stop all of that? I like that my opponent is not giving up, but he is creating those threats, and that is exactly what you should do when you are some material down. I can just ignore all of that, just take here, allow him to grab the exchange back, and then I'm gonna take on f6 and just go forward with my protected passers. As I have the bishop against the knight, that would be very powerful. I think this is the simplest. One of the advantages of having extra material is that you can give it back in the right moment, to simplify the situation, to make it possible for you to just win the game. He can also grab some pawns here, but they are not so important because he's far away from promoting his pawns, and also the bishop is just so much stronger on both sides of the board than the knight. The knight is not that flexible to stop my pawns from promoting, for example. But I can start with the move rook d2, just activating my rook. I really love this move. The rook is always great on the second rank. There is a lot of stuff to take, to attack, and now I'm ready to push my pawn. I don't know, should I try to save this pawn and play something like c5? Maybe I should, because this one pawn just keeps him from using all of his pawns. Only the a pawn can move, but that is much easier for me to deal with it. Okay, he plays king to c1. Let me just bring my rook to g2. Ah, wait, now he can take, and bishop takes b2 is not a move because my bishop is pinned. So maybe I need to play that. Now the bishop is controlling all of the squares, but he goes b4. He actually is pretty fast with his pawns as well. But I have my rook, like whichever pawn he pushes forward, I have the move rook a2 in the end. Just to, in fact, I can even play it immediately or maybe after h3. Because not only it stops the pawn, it also threatens rook a1. Okay, let's start with h3 to create my own passer. Actually, I'm even faster with my own pawn. a6, h2, a7, rook g1. That should be enough. Another way is just after a6 to play rook to a2. If you want to dive 1000 times deeper into this opening and build a lifetime opening repertoire, then check my 10-day opening mastery. The link is in the description. You get a 50% off if you join now, so don't waste this opportunity to also get a full month of live coaching with me where I'm going to analyze your games completely for free. It's included in the course. Okay, do I play h2 or rook a2? Pause the video and try to figure out what is the best way to continue here while I'm trying to calculate that. h2 is a very direct approach. He goes a7, I play rook g1. If he just promotes the queen, I take it with the check, I promote my queen, I have an extra rook, but I should be a little bit careful with some checks. You know, he has a queen and the knight. Generally, it's a very good combination, but my bishop is ideally placed against this knight, so basically it cannot be included into the attack. Also, after h2 and a7, now I can play rook a2. That stops a8 and still threatens to play rook a1. Although, in the end of the day, it still leads to the same line, right? So probably I'm gonna just play h2 anyway. For example, after a7 and rook a2, he can play rook h1. Just saying, I sacrifice my, my rook. But if you take it, then your rook is clumsy on h1 and I play a8 and promote my queen. That is really dangerous. I want to avoid that. So probably rook g1 is the simplest. Very fascinating position. Notice that my opponent has an extra pawn if you just count the number, but in the endgame, it's so often not about the quantity of the pawns, but about the quality. It's about who is going to be the first one to promote the pawn. That player just wins. And hopefully in this case, it's us. Also, just compare the pieces activity. If you're under 2000 ELO, the pieces activity is just everything. It's enough to just crush your opponent because you are creating those threats and your opponent doesn't know how to handle it, and it's so difficult to handle all of the pressure. So the more threats you create, the bigger your chance to win is. He plays a7. As I mentioned before, rook a2, I think just rook h1, and he's threatening to take it, and I'm not a big fan of it. But I like rook g1, very concrete approach, but I don't see anything he can do about it. Probably his best chance is to sacrifice the rook and go for this position. Yes, that is exactly what he does, but what I like is all of my pieces are going to be protected. The queen protects the rook protects the queen, the rook protects the bishop, and all I need to do to win the game would be to escape out of the checks. Hopefully that would be possible. For example, rook f2 check I don't like here, because that would make my queen unprotected. For example, knight d4 check would just win it. It would only work if I have some checks. For example, I can start with rook c1, sacrificing my rook back, but he can even take it. That's stupid. So let me just promote. I assume that queen c8 is his best chance, right? So that I cannot easily escape out of here. My only moves are here and there. King to d6, intuitively I don't like, because he can play c5, and I don't want to be anywhere near this knight, to be honest. On the other hand, I also don't see what he can do, because he cannot give a check with the queen. I'm gonna just win the knight. And if he plays c5, then I go king to d5, queen d7 check, and just king to c4. The king is actually very powerful. No, queen d3 checkmate. Yeah, this is how easy it is to spoil your entire advantage. Make sure you, in such concrete situation, you just calculate the moves till your opponent doesn't have any active moves left. So by the process of elimination, I go king to f7. That was my initial idea anyway. And I want to somehow hide somewhere here. And most importantly, make sure that knight cannot give me any checks. But as my bishop controls all of those squares, this is not possible anyway. He goes queen d7, just king to g8. Very good that everything is protected. No checks from the knight are possible. Queen a8, just king to g7. And he has nothing, then queen to d7 back, and then king h6. And at this point, I don't see any further checks. Maybe queen d2, but this is definitely not enough. g5, bishop g5. All I need is just stop the checks. Once the checks are over, the game is over as well. Let me know in the comments if you have tried this opening. What are your results? How do you feel about this opening? What kind of challenges do you get? I would be genuinely curious to know and help you overcome it in the next videos. Finally, my opponent comes with the move b5 just to defend these knights, but I don't believe in it. Now I just need to connect all of my pieces. Queen to e4 feels very good. If you have the queen, you want to have it in the center, because the queen controls so many squares, is so powerful in the center. My bishop is great, controlling all of the important squares over here. So king b3 is what I anticipate, but then rook to b1. It's important to activate as many pieces as you can. In the best case scenario, all of the pieces you have included into the attack. And of course, one lonely king cannot handle. It's just too much. All right. Yeah, I wanted king a4 and queen takes, but now that's not possible. If I play queen to e3, he goes king a4, queen b3, he goes king a5. He tries to escape. I mean, if he escapes from the checks, he's not going to be that bad. So I need to stop that. Maybe just rook a1. He goes here. Now I wanted to play queen e1, pushing the king all the way there. I like it. And after king to c5, I have queen to e3 check. Obviously, it's not like this is the only way to win, but I find it quite good, as after king to b4 back, I have checkmate. And if you go here, then you lose your queen. Finally, if you play knight d4, I mean, I can even just exchange everything. Or start with the move queen to e5 check. Okay, maybe he wants to play queen to d5. If he at least has a pawn to promote, or maybe connected passers, if I just take it, then he can claim it's not that simple. But this way, I kind of disconnect his pawns. Queen d5, takes, and then they're not connected passers, much easier for me to deal with. If he takes with the king though, then I have the move rook to d1 and I just win the knight. I can play king c6, trying to like continue with the queens on the board, but without the knight, it's just not enough. I would easily escape from the checks. Okay, he does not believe that, but I'm gonna just take it. Again, everything is protected. The more pieces you have vulnerable, the higher chances that you're gonna blunder something. But if you keep everything protected, then you have nothing to be worried about. Maybe king f7 was simpler, actually. So that I can hide with bishop e7, just block the check. Yeah, and then there is no check anymore. This is the power of the queen in the center. Actually, I can even play queen to d8 back to finish the checks immediately. Okay, he still goes on. He doesn't believe that I'm gonna win it. At least he's like pinning my bishop here so that I cannot give any immediate checks. How do I actually win? Maybe just bring my rook back. Let's do that, because I feel like the rook does not participate. b6 or something. Okay. I like bishop g7. You go back, I can just hide on g8. And now my bishop is free to go, which is enough to give it. Even without the bishop, I should give a checkmate. c7, king to a6, and rook a8. I have an entire playlist where I cover so many different lines. Definitely take a look at it here. Don't forget about the amazing offer, 10-day opening mastery right now, 50% off, live full months of coaching with me. Take advantage of that. The link is in the description.